If God made the world for himself, isn't that selfish?
Very briefly, God made the world for himself so that he can marry us and bring us into his world. We're told that God wants this world to become his home, his private dwelling. Now, a home is not a home if you're living there by yourself. In fact, if you're alone, you really don't need a home. You can live in a dormitory. You can sleep in the park. You need a home when there's a relationship that is private, personal, intimate, so it needs a place. So when God says, I created the world for my purpose, that's true. But his purpose is to have us as his own. So it's not selfish at all. In fact, God gives up a lot in order for that relationship to be possible. Like every marriage. To be married, you give up a lot. But then you have a life.
Was the snake looking out for them? Was there anything symbolic with the snake?
The snake represented the lower world. So how did Chava know the world she was volunteering for? Because the snake described it. And nothing the snake said was not true.
So what are some of the tips on marriage, on dating, that we could derive from?
All right. In order to be married, you have to be married like Adam and Eve. What was unique about their marriage? There was no one else in the universe. There was no distraction. We are meant for each other. Final, permanent, forever, without a shadow of a doubt. Of course, for them that was easy because there was no one else physically. But that tells us what a marriage is supposed to be for all times. When you marry, it's because there is no one else in the world for you. This is your soulmate. This was who God created to be your spouse. So there should be no doubts, there should be no distractions, there should be no second thoughts. This is it. That's how you get married. The fact that divorce is possible doesn't mean anything. It's not like somebody said, my marriage is really no good. When do I know that I have to get divorced? Divorce is not an option. Divorce is not an option because when it's necessary, it is not optional. Then you have to. And when it's not necessary, then it's not an option. So it's not like a person is married with the knowledge that if I ever want to, I can always get out. No. No. So how do you know when you should get out? If you're asking, then it's not time. If you're asking, should I get divorced? The answer is no. When there's no question anymore, because you just have to, then you talk about it. Because it's not an option. You either must have it or must not have it. It's not like a convenient back door where you can slip away anytime you want. It's not like that. It's like Adam and Eve. Adam said when he saw Chava, this is mine. This is where I belong. My flesh, my blood, my soul, this is it. And there were no doubts. That's how you have to get married. And that's why this modern way of getting married, we date, we make believe we're married, we act as if we're married, and if we like it, we'll maybe get married. That is not a marriage. That's playing house. You get married knowing that God intends for us to be married and that God has already chosen someone for us to marry, and He will, in some mysterious, divine way, get us to meet, get us to like each other, and get us married. It's not man-made. Every marriage is made in heaven. It's the only way it happens. Man-made marriage is just playing house. So you have to be aware the person you marry was not your choice. It was God's choice. And God made you look good to the other, to your spouse. Because then you found out that they're not as good as they look. So He tricks you into it. But now you're married, and now you know where God wants you, where God needs you, and how you can serve Him best by being married to this person and making a good life for the two of you. And that happens when both of you are aware of something bigger than the both of you. It's not just, we fell in love, so we got married. That's childish. That's immature. And that's why if you get married simply out of love, the chances are not great. You fall out of love, the marriage is over. Bad mood, you're finished. It's much more than love. Much more than love. Love is fragile. Love is fickle. Love can be selfish. Don't marry for love. Marry for marriage. That makes sense? You're getting married because you like marriage. No, you're getting married because you like her. That doesn't make sense. If you like her, like her. What are you getting married for? Get married because marriage is right. Marriage is meant to be. Marriage is a divine idea, and it's the way God wants us to live. We always heard it should be, so we marry.
You know what? I was actually about to say that we chose marriage as a distraction from the going-ons in the world right now. But the questions are Corona related. So if you allowed me, is there something messianic about this time period that we're going through? Something final redemption, end of days, beginning of a new dawn?
Yeah, we always look at every problem and say, this is going to prepare us for Mashiach, which is true. Everything that has happened in the last 2,000 years is preparation for Mashiach. But there's something a little more tangible. Because one of the things that we are told is going to happen just before the coming of Mashiach is that the mixture of good and evil, which is the effect of eating from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, which means that in every good there is some evil, and in every evil there is some good. The little bit of good gives the evil its existence. Because pure evil can't exist. If a lie is going to work and be accepted, you have to bring in a little bit of truth. And that little kernel of truth is what keeps the lie going. If it's just a blatant lie, it's not going to fly. Nobody will believe you. The same is true with all evil. It's empty, it's lifeless, it's meaningless, and exists only by virtue of the little bit of good that it stole and is using to hide behind. That's actually a virus. See, there's a difference between viruses and bacteria. There is good bacteria and there is bad bacteria. That's why you shouldn't be careless with antibiotics, because they can kill the good bacteria. Good bacteria, bad bacteria, because bacteria is alive, living cells. Viruses are not alive. They are not living cells. They're parasites. They have no life. They are lifeless. They siphon life off of living things. So the virus has to be able to get to you, get through your defenses, and then it can draw life from you like a parasite. So the Gemara says that before the coming of Mashiach, the good and the evil will be separated, and the evil will be exposed for what it is, and the good will be exposed for what it is, which means there is good that is hidden and concealed by evil, and there is evil that is camouflaged and charades as good, like sacred cows. There was evil in communism, but it paraded as the utopia, the Messiah, Mashiach for the working class. And besides, it's your government's policy, and you have to be loyal to your government. So there's all this facade of legitimacy and of decency. There's evil that hides behind religion. In the name of God, you can get away with almost anything. God said to kill you. This must be sorted out. So before Mashiach comes, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see evil that can no longer hide and goodness that can no longer be hidden. So goodness is going to come from places we don't expect. And evil is going to become so obvious that we can't tolerate it. Tell you an interesting story. There was a person in Minnesota, very sincere, gentle, sensitive soul. He wrote to the Rebbe. He said, I am depressed, I'm discouraged, I'm giving up because I am so bad. I am so bad, I don't know what to do with myself. The Rebbe writes back saying, the Baal Shem Tov taught us that we serve God by being joyful. You have to serve God with joy. So you have the opportunity to serve God, and you should be very happy about that. The man writes back to the Rebbe and says, Rebbe, if you knew how bad I am, you wouldn't tell me to be happy. So the Rebbe writes back, I doubt that you yourself know how bad you are. And even so, I'm telling you to be happy. It's characteristic of the Rebbe. You're not gonna convince him that unhappiness is valid or necessary. So the Rebbe says, I doubt you know how bad you are, and even so, which means you're worse than you think, and you still should be happy. But I was wondering, why would the Rebbe assume that? Why would the Rebbe assume that he doesn't know how bad he is? That's a little critical. It's a little condemning, isn't it? Now, the Rebbe wasn't guessing. The Rebbe knew for sure that he is worse than he thinks he is. The Rebbe was just being polite. How was the Rebbe sure that he is worse than he thinks he is? Because if he knew how bad he was, he would stop. Stop. If we knew how bad we were, we would stop being bad. The problem is that we're willing to admit that we are bad, but we're not all bad. I may be bad, but I'm cute. I may have done terrible things, but I didn't mean to be terrible. I meant well. And so I'm not that bad. Because if the evil was stark, it would have to stop. There would be no tolerating it. Look around. Look at what's happening. The evil is becoming so blatantly, unapologetically evil that it just can't go on. And the good is coming from places we didn't expect. Like couples who are on the verge of divorce, and all of a sudden they're starting to like each other. Didn't expect that. So this is definitely messianic. The fact that we were isolated for Yontif, the fact that we made our Siddharim, our Seders, by ourselves, with just our family, or some people completely solo, completely alone in their apartment, making a Seder. What is God telling us? God is telling us that he doesn't look at us as a group. He doesn't look at us as a congregation. He doesn't look at us as a people. He looks at us as individuals. The reason our mitzvahs are precious to him is because the individual who does the mitzvah is precious to him. And so God arranged it that we should not have public seders, we should not have big crowds, we should not have a minyan in the synagogue, because today he needs us to serve him purely as individuals. He's saying, I just want your mitzvah. Don't impress me with crowds. Don't impress me with big numbers. Just you, in the privacy of your home, doing your best to make a Seder, which you never did before. And you're bound to make some mistakes. That's perfect. That's exactly what he wants. Like the man said, God has no grandchildren. Ever think about that? You know how old God is? At his age, shouldn't he have grandchildren and great-grandchildren? He has none. Why doesn't he have any grandchildren? Because every Jew is his child, not his grandchild. In other words, my child is not his grandchild. I'm not his grandchild, even though my father was his child. What that's telling us is that your connection to God is not because of your mother and not because of your father. It came through them, that's true, but your connection is directly to God. You're his child as much as Moses, as much as Abraham, as much as King David, as much as the Baal Shem Tov. You are just as much his child. And that's what he wanted us to remember, because we're becoming too much of a congregational Judaism. We think if there's not a crowd, it's not meaningful. God is reminding us the only reason a crowd is meaningful is because the crowd is composed of individuals. And because every individual is meaningful, collectively they are very meaningful. So I heard from people who are really seriously alone, and they were dreading Pesach, the Seder. To sit alone, talking to yourself, making a Seder, that's awkward. And besides, they don't know how to make a Seder. They never did make a Seder. They were always at somebody else's Seder. But after Yontif, they called and said, it was amazing. It was amazing. I felt alone, but I felt significant. What I was doing mattered. It was an amazing experience. God is getting very cozy to each of us individually. That certainly is a step towards Mashiach, because Mashiach comes when God gathers all Jews one by one, meaning as individuals. We can all be inspired at the same time over the internet. Millions of Jews can be inspired at the very same moment, but each one is inspired individually in their individual relationship to God. It's not just a silver lining. It's pure gold.
From the experiences that you've been having and the people you've been speaking to, what is your outlook in terms of whether or not there be this monumental cultural shift after this thing is over, or like, in a few months everyone will get over it and we'll just go back to being, the Olam Haza we're all so accustomed to, once the hype dies down?
No, I really hope we're not going to do that. This is such an incredible opportunity to break out of the old molds and reveal a much finer way of living. Look, we've had our eyes opened. We now know that you can have a very meaningful life without ever going to a nightclub. We now know that you can have a meaningful life without going shopping. And life can be wonderful without travel. You don't have to get on an airplane. We also know that life can be great without a job. Yes, you need money, but life is great without a job. People who are single, playing the dating game, the social game, it is so distasteful all of a sudden. What a way to live. It's horrible. It's dishonest, it's shallow, it's degrading, it's demoralizing, it's disrespectful. It's horrible. It feels so much better not to be playing that game. Our eyes are opened now. We've seen the reality and the truth. We called that life. Going, running, sports events, entertainment, nightclubs, partying, shopping, working, the mall. None of it is necessary for life. It's all a commentary on life. And not all commentaries are equally valid. So we now know where we live. We can't go back to that distasteful way of what we thought was life. It's not. Can we go back to business as usual? Go back to a business world in which there's nothing but anxiety, stress, animosity, jealousy, greed. Everybody's popping pills to calm down from this ridiculous lifestyle. And this is called making a living. This is called getting yourself sick. We don't want to go back to that. And I hope that we can't go back to that, because we're all bankrupt. Countries are bankrupt. Companies are bankrupt. Individuals are bankrupt. So how is business going to work now? I will produce something for which I have no money, but I'm hoping that you'll buy my product and then you'll cover my bills. But I can't buy your product because I have no money. Countries can't export goods because the receiving country can't pay. If they can't pay, then you can't afford to produce. That's it, we're finished. Which means the old way is over. We got to find new ways of mutually supporting each other. It can't be a rat race anymore. It can't. So hopefully we won't go back because we can't go back. But even if we could, we shouldn't. From now on, business means going out to meet people so that you can help them and they can help you. And that way we make a better world. The money's good, and the money will come. But that's not what it's about. When God cursed Adam, in quotes, and said, by the sweat of your brow, you're going to eat bread. In the Garden of Eden, nobody had to work. Which means that if we stayed in the Garden of Eden, everyone would have their own fruit trees and their own vineyards and their own space, and no one would ever meet anyone else. Wouldn't need to. And that would not be good. So God said, I'm going to arrange it in such a way that in order for you to have what to eat, you're going to have to meet somebody from the Far East who you would never meet otherwise, or from the Middle East, or from down south. People you would never meet otherwise. And by meeting, you will find ways of helping each other, of doing each other a favor, of understanding each other, of encouraging each other, and the world will become a small village with people united in a common cause. And the common cause is make the world what God needs it to be. Become God's partner in creation. You can't do that sitting alone in your house forever. So you have to go out and meet people, not just to make money, certainly not to rip them off. You're meeting these people because somehow you can do something for them. They can do something for you. Something generous, something kind, something moral. You can share a good thought, an encouraging thought, a holy thought. That's how we elevate ourselves and the people around us to a more noble, more elegant, more gracious, more divine way of living. Make sense?
I can't speak for all the blocked videos, but what is it that once all of the things that we do in our day-to-day lives, once all of that is stripped away, what is it that we're doing? You know, what is it that we fill our days with, and that we're finding out that I could live without that, but what is it that I'm living with that I feel I could live without that?
So let me introduce a really futuristic concept. For all of history, we have functioned on the basis of need. Everything we accomplished, everything we discovered, everything we invented came from need, because we need. It wakes you up in the morning, it keeps you up at night. Your needs. Your need to eat, your need for security, your need for safety, your need for comfort, for a roof over your head, for a fire in your fireplace in the winter, and for an air conditioner in the summer. Need. Everything is need. Why does a farmer get up early in the morning to milk the cow? Well, you have to. Plow the fields, harvest the crops. You have to. Why do you have to? What is the need? Well, ultimately, if you track it back, the need is not to die. If the farmer doesn't farm, we're going to die. If you don't wake up in the morning and milk the cow will die. Everything is motivated by the threat of death, ultimately. Today, the motivation is not so strong. It doesn't ring with the same authority. Back in the olden days, the farmer wakes his kid early in the morning and says, come on, we got to go. And the kid says, why do we have to? So because if we don't get the crops in on time, we have nothing to eat for the winter and we're going to starve. You want to die? So the kid got up. Today, we wake our kids up early in the morning to go to kindergarten. And we say, you got to get up. You're going to miss the bus. The kid says, why do I have to? What are you going to say? Because if you don't, you'll die. Well, if you don't go to kindergarten and you don't get through school and you don't get a degree and you don't make it through college and you don't get a good job and you don't get a good wage and you don't make a good living and you end up in the street because you can't afford, you're going to get some kind of a disease and you're going to die. Say that to a kid in kindergarten. Far-fetched. But more than that. Just in the last few years, something changed in the world. Talk about messianic. Something changed in the world. Death is no longer a valid motivation. Don't threaten me with death. I've had it with that. Don't tell me to live life in order not to die. It's not adding up. It's not making any sense. God brings us into the world, gives us life, and says, don't die. That's it. Not worth it. It's not worth it. You hear children today saying, leave me alone. I didn't ask to be born. This has got a positive message. Don't put them on antidepressants yet. Listen to what he's telling you. What do you mean I have to go to school? I don't have to go to school. I didn't even ask to be born. That makes sense? I didn't ask to be born. I don't need this. I don't ask to be born. Nobody asks to be born. Nobody. Because we don't need to be born. We don't need it. I've never heard anyone complain that they weren't born. Why wasn't I born? Nobody complains. We don't need to be born. We really don't. The soul does not need to come down to earth. It does not. And the body doesn't need a soul schlepping it around from here to there. It would just as gladly remain a lump of earth. So when you tell a child you have to clean up your room, the child says, I what? I have to clean up my room? I don't have to have a room. I don't have to have a life. I don't have to be here. What are you talking about? So, well, if you don't clean up your room, yeah, well, what? What, you're going to threaten me? You can't threaten me anymore. It's not working. And besides, if you threaten me, then you prove that I am right. I say I don't have to clean up my room. You say I do have to. Well, who's right? I say I don't have to. You say I do. I say, no, I don't. And you say, I'm going to punish you. See that? You can't think of a single reason that I should clean up my room. That's why you resort to threats and punishments. The same thing is true with religion. You have to do this. You have to worship. You have to pray. You have to. I have to? I have to? I don't. I really don't. Oh, you want to go to hell? Okay. There's your threat. So obviously you don't know why I have to. The religious grandfather says to his grandchild, you must keep Shabbos. You have to keep kosher. You have to go to shul. You have to read Hebrew. Child says, I don't have to. No, you have to. No, I really don't have to. Who's right? Maybe a little scary to admit this, but the kid is right. Doesn't have to. So let me put it all in the context of a little incident. This boy from America went off to yeshiva in France many decades ago. The yeshiva in France was a little primitive for American tastes. So the boy came home after 3 months. Couldn't take it. Too primitive. But he came back a much more mature, much wiser, much more responsible person. What happened? The day that he arrived, he went into the office and he said to the dean of the yeshiva, I have to call my mother. Where's the phone? He said it in Yiddish, but it works just as well in English. The dean of the yeshiva said to him, whoa, 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 whoa. I have to call my mother. Who is I, and what do you mean have to? I have to. It struck the boy very, very deeply. It's not true. You don't have to. What should he have said? He should have said, my mother needs me to call her. Because that's true. So the boy saying, I have to call my mother, or I need to call my mother, no, no, no. Why can't you talk straight? Why can't you be honest? You don't have to. If you don't call your mother, you won't suffer. Your mother will. So your mother needs you to call her. You don't need. That's how we're supposed to view Judaism. I need to become Shomer Shabbos. I don't need to become Shomer Shabbos. I need. So you can say, well, if you're not, you're going to be punished. Okay, that's not working anymore. Don't threaten me, because that simply means that you don't have any more argument. I don't need to keep Shabbos. God needs me to keep Shabbos. How do I know this? He created the world in 6 days and he rests on the Shabbos. I didn't create the world in 6 days. Why must I rest on Shabbos? So obviously, God, who observes Shabbos, needs us to join him in his Shabbos. Every mitzvah is that way. This is what God needs from me. I don't need anything. I don't need anything because I don't need to be alive. So the only thing you can say to me is, well, if you want to stay alive, you better do this. Otherwise, don't. Not working. That threat has expired. It has lost its power. It's not flying anymore. What does fly is, my mother needs me to call her. So I really should. God needs me to do a mitzvah. I really should. For myself, I don't need anything. I don't need any. So do I need to eat? I don't need to eat. Well, if you don't eat, you're going to die. Yeah, we're back to that again. God designed me and created me with this condition, that in order for me to continue living, I have to eat. So I have to eat, or he needs me to eat and designed me that way. There's nothing I really need if I don't need to be alive at all. So it's really plagiarism. It's blasphemous to say I need to eat. You're not the creator. You were designed that way, and often against your will. There are times you wish you didn't have to eat, but you got no choice. Why? Because you didn't design yourself. And if you did, you probably wouldn't make yourself dependent on food. It's a ridiculous condition to be in. But God created you that way. So when you eat, can you admit that this is not your idea? This is not your doing. This is not your need. This is what is needed of you. When a person comes to a psychiatrist in the future, not distant future, and says, I need help, I need love, I need support, I need validation, I need a better self-image, the psychiatrist will not say, yes, you do. The psychiatrist will say, you don't need anything. Good news, you don't. You are needed, you are not needy. Can you imagine what a beautiful world that would be? You wake up in the morning and your first thought is, what am I needed for? Who needs me? I'm here, I'm available, I'm ready to help. Would that not be a wonderful world? And it's becoming so obviously rational. I don't need. And right away, the threats start coming. Now, don't threaten me. Talk sense to me. Why do I need to eat? Well, you were designed and created that way. Okay, so the creator needs me to eat. Talk straight.
So I guess Tevye was saying, why do you need me?
Or
Right?
would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? The answer is yes. Yes. God needs you the way he created you. But this idea that we are needed rather than needy, when you think about it, you realize this is such a fundamental truth. I would much rather be needed than have needs. So to be told that I am needed, that is the best news in the world. It's much better than being told that I am loved. And in the Torah, if you pay attention, God hardly ever says, I love you. Maybe once or twice. Kind of incidental. What he's telling us on every page of the Torah is that he needs us. I need you to do this mitzvah. I need you to eradicate that evil. I need you to avoid this problem. I need you to elevate the world through holiness. It's all telling us how we are needed, not how we are loved. And because we know that we're needed, we have out-survived all other nations. They're looking for love. They don't realize a human being would much rather be needed than loved. Because if you don't need me and I am not necessary, don't bother loving me. This is futuristic. It's coming. It's happening. When the 10-year-old can make such a philosophical statement, I didn't ask to be born. Philosophers used to discuss this and write books about this, became famous for their theories on the purpose of life and so on. Now 10-year-olds are saying it. Something's happening. We're getting closer to the truth. I don't need anything because I'm not the creator. Whoever created the world, obviously needs something. We're here to serve. And it's a pleasure to serve. I know for a fact that when I'm home alone and I have to eat lunch, I'm not going to prepare a meal. I'll open a can, find some leftovers. But if you're coming over for lunch, I'll whip up a meal because now it's a party. So to cook for you is much more enjoyable than to cook for myself, because it is so nice to be needed. It's not so pleasant to be needy. What do you think of that?
I think it certainly explains why it feels so good to help people. It's embedded into the operating system.
And nobody ever committed suicide because they weren't loved. People will commit suicide if they feel unneeded. So we got to really be careful. We tell our children, we love you, I love you, I love you more than everything, you're the love of my life. You're missing the point. It's cute, it's nice, it's fine. That's not what a child needs to hear. A child needs to hear you are essential. I would be nothing without you. You are needed. God needs you, even if no one else does. The reason you exist is out of his need, not because he loves you and wants to enjoy partying with you. Because, you see, if I am loved but not needed, I feel like a pet. People have pets. They don't need them, they love them. For a pet, that's fine. A cat doesn't need to be needed. But if you're nice and you give him something to eat, yeah, that's great. A human being can't be a pet. If I feel like I'm not necessary, no amount of love is going to make my life worth living. So let's give the children the right message. God needs you. You're an indispensable part of his plan. Does he love you? Not the way you're behaving now, no. Love kind of needs to be deserved. But that he needs you, that comes from him. He needed you before you were even born, which is why you were born. So the need is permanent, the need is unconditional. I need you unconditionally. I love you unconditionally? No. I love you when you're lovable. It's not love that we're lacking. It's the recognition of the indispensability. Countries, cultures, races will get along fine without love if we would just recognize everything God created is absolutely necessary. So, where's the love? Why do we kill each other? Shouldn't we love each other? No, first of all, if you're going to wait until you love everybody before you stop killing everybody, it's not going to be pretty. You don't kill people because they are just as important as you, not because you love them. So really, don't love me, just stop killing me. And why should you stop killing me? Because I am necessary as much as you are. So if we could recognize each other's validity, we would have peace on earth. Waiting for everybody to love everybody, that's ridiculous. Some people are not lovable. God created them too. And they too are necessary in this world. So here's how it works. You're not important to me because I love you. I love you because you're important to me. The mitzvah to love God with all your heart and all your soul. See, love is so important. No, God is so important. That's why you should love him. In other words, your brother is important to you, whether you love him or not. Your boyfriend is not important to you, no matter how much you love him. Until he puts a ring on your finger, he's not important. So love follows importance. It does not create. I mean, look how nasty it would be. You're important because I love you. In other words, if I stop loving you, you're not important. That is so narcissistic. That is so insulting. So we would much rather be needed than loved. So stop with the love bombing and start recognizing the validity and the necessity of every person in this world.
Just there are a few young moms and dads that I notice here on here, and just if you could close out with just a word of what we tell our inquisitive children who are, as much as you try to guard them from all the news and all the goings on, they still pick up on a lot of it. And from a personal level, there's been so many great Chabad and Hasidic rabbis and teachers, just absolute legends who we've lost over the last few weeks. And my own children are, what do you tell them about what the Eibishter, what God is doing here? Any guidance on that? And then we'll let you go.
Children are amazing in their ability to accept what is if you just tell them what is. We try to justify what is. They don't need that. Adults look for justifications. Why is this happening? Children want to know what's happening, which is more legitimate. What is happening? Now, the very fact that the people who have passed away are such incredibly special people, doesn't that tell you something? The fact that those people passed away and we can't say Kaddish for them. How awful is that? They don't even deserve to have a decent funeral? People saying Kaddish? Again, remember the story of Adam and Eve. If the story doesn't look right, then you're not looking at it from the right perspective. Let's try a different approach. Most people who pass away need Kaddish said for them in order for their soul to make the transition from earth to heaven. It's a difficult transition. Saying Kaddish for them helps ease that transition. Now all of a sudden, God arranges for certain people to die and arranges for us not to go to synagogue and not to have a minyan and not to say Kaddish. Hello? These people don't need your Kaddish. There is something so special about these people and about the times and about, they don't need Kaddish. Why would God deprive them of a Kaddish? They're the best of the best. They're better than the best of the best because the best of the best need Kaddish. They don't. So instead of seeing it as a negative, why don't we see how positive this thing is? We can't go to the synagogue. Why? God doesn't want to hear from us anymore? Why are you thinking so negative? God is saying, I hear you at home. You don't have to go anywhere. Talk to me. In normal times, yes, you have to put together a minyan to be able to reach me effectively. But not today. Today, just talk to me. I'm listening. It's so beautiful. So we should tell our children that certain people pass away under circumstances that are unusual because they are unusual. And secondly, they're coming back. In a very short time, they're going to be coming back. Souls who have been out of their bodies for thousands of years are coming back. But they waited thousands of years. These souls who passed away this year, they're coming right back. Death is not forever. You must tell your children that. Because we live under this false premise, under this false assumption that life is temporary and death is permanent. There's nothing further from the truth. Life is permanent, death is temporary. The soul never dies, it just moves from here to heaven, waiting to come back to here. Life doesn't die. Death, on the other hand, was invented as a response to eating from the tree of knowledge. It serves its purpose, and then it's not necessary anymore, and it will stop. And all those who have died will come back to life. Death is temporary. For some souls, it was a 4,000-year temporary break. For people today, it's going to be a very short break. Tell your children, don't be afraid to talk about death. They can handle it. Just tell them what it is. Don't try to explain why, because we don't know why. And if you try to explain it, the kid realizes you're babbling. You don't know why. We don't need to know why. We need to know what. What's happening and what are we supposed to do? Let me end with this little story. Rabbi Lau, chief rabbi of Israel, the former chief rabbi, Rabbi Lau Sr., an incredible human being. I mean, how incredible do you need to be to come out of a concentration camp and become the chief rabbi of Israel? An amazing guy. He speaks publicly, and he often repeats what he heard from the Rebbe. He was speaking to the Rebbe years and years ago, and they were talking about the problems in Israel and the problems of Jews all over the world. And when they finished, Rabbi Lau sighed and said, Rebbe, what's going to be? And the Rebbe said to him, rather than asking what's going to be, we should ask what we can do. Rabbi Lau quotes this often, repeats the story, and quotes the Rebbe. We need to ask what more we can do, not ask what's going to be. Why shouldn't we ask what's going to be? When I heard Rabbi Lau tell the story the first time, my first thought was, what's wrong with asking what's going to be? It's a good question. Be nice to know. So my first thought was, the Rebbe is trying to avoid negative, painful subjects. So let's not talk about what's going to be. It's too painful. That is very pessimistic and doesn't sound like the Rebbe at all. So I thought, no, that's not what he meant. Maybe what the Rebbe meant was, let's be practical. There isn't much we can do about what's going to be. Let's talk about what we can do. That's practical, doable. That sounds a little better, but it still doesn't sound like the Rebbe. Then I thought, a third possibility. If you ask the Rebbe what's going to be, the Rebbe's answer would certainly be, what kind of question is that? Mashiach is coming, it's going to be wonderful. What's going to be? We know what's going to be. Mashiach is coming and it's going to be great. Now you might think, if that's the case, then I have no further questions. The Rebbe says, there is a question you should ask. What more can we do? It's not out of fear or pessimism that we want to do something to make the world better. We want to do something to make the world better because in a very short time it will be already better, and then we will have missed the opportunity. There's no question what's going to be. It's going to be good. This is God's world. It's going to be the way He wants it to be. But He wants us to be partners. So there is a question we need to ask. What can we do to participate in the perfecting of the world? Because it's going to get perfect, there's no question. So this is what we need to ask ourselves. The world is getting better rapidly. But I'd like to do something before it has improved without my help. I want to participate, not be a spectator. So if I do nothing, Mashiach will come. But then it'll be embarrassing. If I do something, then I can welcome Mashiach with a whole heart, because I've got nothing to be ashamed of. I helped. In tiny ways, but that's all that was necessary. That's all that was left, was the tiny little things, finishing touches, the crowning beauty. So we need to participate in the coming of Mashiach, not just anticipate. So let's do it. We have a very short amount of time left to do the best we can do to be participants in the plan that Grandma Chava foresaw and had the confidence that her children will succeed. We will do tshuva, and we will bring the world up and bring God into the world, and we will have heaven on earth. It's going to happen. Let's do our share.